Jiva Korja, good morning, good afternoon, good day, or if you're watching a recording of this Fireside Chat, Eimear here, and welcome to another chat. This is our 105th, where I'm in conversation with a member of the Order of Bards, Ovates and Druids. But first of all, as I do, I will start with a prayer for peace. Gamara Shiakon of na Crinne, Gamara Shiakon in our Jaili, agus in our Jirha, Ganari Lin and Lakaj Garamaka, Gamich Buikas Jiv, Je Chivdaka, a spirit Chivdaka. May peace prevail on earth. May peace prevail in our homes and in our countries. May our missions be accomplished. We thank you, guardian spirits and guardian deities. As the fever of day calms towards twilight, may all that is strained in us come to ease. We pray for all who've suffered violence today. May an unexpected serenity surprise them. For those who risk their lives each day for peace, may their hearts glimpse providence at the heart of history. That those who make riches from violence and war might hear in their dreams the cries of the lost. That we might see through our fear of each other a new vision to heal our fatal attraction to aggression. That those who enjoy the privilege of peace might not forget their tormented brothers and sisters. That the wolf might lie down with the lamb, that our swords be beaten into plowshares, and no hurt or harm be done anywhere along the Holy Mountain. With thanks to John O'Donoghue. So let me see where you are. Linda Joan from a stormy Norfolk Island. It's great that your internet connection is good enough. And we have Washington, North Carolina, Northern Arapaho, Eastern Shoshone Territory, Wyoming. That's lovely. North Tipperary, drizzly London. Actually, it's been a wonderful day here in Ireland. It's been cold, well, cold by our standards, but sunny and clear. County Meath, hi Michelle, Holland, Belgium, Northamptonshire, South Wales, Fife. Lovely. New York. Good evening from Longford. It's from Sean, just doing bedtime with little Tomas and Aoife. Denmark, Hertfordshire, is it? Hertfordshire. Ontario, Lapland, wow. Stafford, UK, Norway. Great to see all these people from just so many places. Prince Edward Island, wonderful. So we have an unusual chat today. I've got two guests, which is not my usual thing. One from the US and one from the UK. So I'm going to introduce Kate Collison, who's someplace in the UK, and Billy Stewart, Billy, we can hardly see you. That's better. Billy is in the US, who has been a guest before. So I'm going to, Billy, if you mute for the moment, and I'm going to ask Kate, just to start with you. You are so welcome to this Fireside Chat. Just tell us where you are and what your landscape is like before we get into.
I'm in the New Forest, which is a national park on the southern coast of England. It's absolutely beautiful. And that's what inspired the story today.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. So I'm going to ask you to mute just because there's a bit of an interference, and then Billy can come. Or I'll mute you, actually, and then I can unmute you. Billy, can you unmute? Yeah.
Yeah. Hi. I'm in Taos, New Mexico in the United States. Whoa, we're falling. I live on the foot of a mountain that goes up to 14,000 feet with forest all around me. And down where I'm at is, it's called the Taos, or Rancho de Taos, and it was once a beautiful ranch land. And it's still good farming land for northern New Mexico.
Okay, wonderful. So the reason, funny, when we were offline, there was no interference, but somehow when we go online, there's extra interference when there's two people on together. So the reason we're here is to discuss the Bard, Ovate, and Druid tartan. So I am going to hand this over to, that has just been launched, in the last 2 weeks. And I'm just interested in hearing the story. So whoever wants to start, feel free. I'm going to leave it to you two.
Well, it started back in 2020, didn't it, Billy?
Yes, I think so.
And you posted something on social media to say that you would love to have a tartan that was fitting for you as a musician, but also with your druid path. And it was on one of the OBOD social media sites.
Yep.
And I have a little business here in the New Forest. I've designed tartans before, and we've got 5 now in the New Forest, all of which I've designed and registered. And I offered my services. And overnight, Billy and I became friends on social media, and that's where it all started. So it's taken a while. It's taken nearly 3 years now, but that's due to COVID and all sorts of different things. But it is finally here. It's properly registered, and we do have our very own Bards, Ovates, and Druids starting now.
So, over to you, Billy. If you've
Yeah.
anything-
Okay, so I mentioned when I was on Fireside Chat before, I came from the reclaiming tradition of witchcraft here in America, and I think it's all over it is all over the world now. And we like to dress up. I mean, one of the things behind all that is that you got to change reality a bit when you go into ritual, and I feel like we have that same thing in Druidry, and that's what's with the robes and stuff. But it never felt right to me because I've always been very shamanic and very tribal in how I presented myself in ritual. So I mean, I like to wear horns and glitter. Hello. So when I'm a transgender man, and when I always wanted to wear kilts, but I felt like a Catholic schoolgirl. So I started wearing kilts. When I started wearing kilts all the time after transition, and it started to be my go-to for ritual. For one, I can feel somewhat sky-clad. For those of you that don't know that terminology, that means like basically naked. So I could just wear my kilt with no shirt. I'm covered up. I feel comfortable if I'm outside, somebody finding me. And so I started to wear kilts all the time. And one of the first things I put on Facebook was saying, hey, does anybody else not feel comfortable in the white robes? I mean, that kind of goes back to a few things. For one thing, if I have a coffee, I'm going to spill it on me for sure. But other reasons why it just didn't feel right. It wasn't my thing. And I said, I wear kilts. And then one thing led to another. And then my other post, and that's when Kate saw it. And it was just kind of evolved into that. And we started going back and forth. And in reclaiming, and I feel very much like Obod's very much the same way. I stepped back a little because I wanted it to be the community. And we both did. We both stepped back from that process and sent it out to the community so they could choose the colors and go back and forth. I was afraid it was going to become crazy because in reclaiming it can become nuts when you're trying to make a decision with 500 people and you're a collective. So that's the story so far for me.
Okay, Tracy has a question. She says, do the white robes feel uncomfortable because of the KKK connection?
Yes, I believe that is part of it for me. I've been a civil rights activist all my life, and if somebody stumbled upon me in a white robe in the woods here in America, it would just, it would go from anything to embarrassing to maybe getting beat up, So yeah, that's probably part of it. And it also just feels like, to me, Druidry is dancing crazy in the woods. So falling over a white robe would not be pretty.
Okay. And Hannah Semple has this, and I mean, this may be for you, Kate, is why does the tartan have to be registered?
I suppose you could just design a tartan and do nothing with it. But if you want it to be properly registered, and with that will come the intellectual property rights for it. And then once it's on the register, when you want to have the material woven and made, that's what the tartan mill will access, what's known as the thread count, which is the order and the colours in the specific order. And they access that directly from the tartan registry in order to weave it.
Okay, and you were talking, Billy, about putting it out to the community. Who was the community that you raised this with?
I put it on a couple of the sites on our, when you're a member of the order, we have our own group. So I put it on there. Then I put it on the Facebook page I have that is, oh my God, I always forget the name of it because I went through so many. But I think it's OBOD USA. OBOD and Friends USA. I put it on that. So I put it out into the Facebook world. I find that the easiest place to communicate these days.
Yeah, it went on quite a few different sites. And yes, so many, probably hundreds of people had an input into choosing the colours and the design. And then Billy and I, we had a couple of designs, didn't we? And sort of chose the best 4 or 5 and put them back out to the community. And yeah, eventually we decided on one.
And of course, so you were consulting OBOD members, but it is not an OBOD tartan. It is a BARD's ovate or BOD tartan.
Absolutely, yeah. So in order to have a tartan registered, if you want it registered under your own name or your own business, you can just go ahead. You don't need anybody's permission for that. But if you want to register it under, for example, in my case, the New Forest, which is a national park, or for the order, I don't own any rights to the order or the New Forest, so you have to get written permission. So I contacted Philip Cargom with our design, showed him it. We spent a lovely hour on the phone. And he was very specific. It wasn't something that I'd thought of before, but he was very adamant that he didn't want the first 2 words, the order of, in the name. He just wanted it as Bards, Ovates and Druids Tartan. And the reason for that is absolutely valid. For a start, he didn't want it to become a uniform for OBOD at all. He didn't want anybody to have to buy it. But at the same time, he said, if you restrict it to just OBOD rather than any Bard, Ovate or Druid, you're limiting it. And we wanted it obviously to go out to as many people as possible. So for those 2 very valid and good reasons, we didn't include the order of. So it's just Bards, Ovates and Druids Tartan is what it's registered as. And he had to write me a permission letter, which I included in the application, signed and obviously on headed paper, giving me the permission to use the word.
Okay. And there's a question here from Tracy. Did you use the colours that relate specifically to the level Bards, blue, Ovates, green?
Absolutely, yes. So the colours, shall I show you the tartan and you can see? So here, I'm sure a lot of people have seen it online, but here it is. This is the very, very first. It still has the tag from Loch Carron. The very first piece of material of the very first roll is right here. So within that, you have the 3 golden strands of Arwen running right through the middle. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
You also have the 3 grade colours: the blue for Bard, the green for Ovate, and the white for Druid. You have the 5 elemental colours: green for earth, white for air, orange for fire, blue for water, and purple for spirit. And you also have the 3 colours for land, sea, and sky. So obviously a lot of those overlap. So we narrowed it down to 6 different colours. So there we are.
Oh, it's beautiful. Now, so that's woven in Scotland?
Yes. So this is woven in a traditional tartan mill. And I have a roll of 51 meters of it. It's really quite wide. That's how wide it is, 1 meter and 1.40 meters wide. And then this is obviously about 25 centimeters long, just a little bit here. So this is available to buy by the meter. But there's also another version, which you're quite keen on, Eimear, aren't you?
Yes. I ordered it by mistake because I went online and that was the bit I saw. And I thought, oh, it's hand woven, or it's, freshly woven, because I have two tartans. I have a Campbell wraps of a Campbell and a Buchanan from Howard, my late husband. And that's what I was going to do. I was going to buy 2 meters of that tartan and make another wrap. And then I saw this and I thought, oh, they have a mixture of silk and merino wool. And I ordered it. Oh, and I said, it's already as a wrap. And then I saw the other bit, but I'm happy with my order and the fact that it's going to be woven.
Good. So, yeah. So what I was talking about is the sort of, I mean, this is eco-friendly in itself because it's made in a 17th century tartan mill. It's pure wool. But this is even more eco-friendly. This is dyed with plant dyes and hand dyed, hand woven. And my friend Neil makes these. He's very talented. He makes them to order. So this is a scarf. Same design, slightly paler, I'd say, but that's due to the plant dyes. But when you register a tartan, you don't have to register the exact colour. So if you just you can just register as mid green or dark blue or something like that. So the exact shade of colour is quite variable. They're quite happy with that. And when I first started doing a plant dyed, I contacted them and asked specifically because you couldn't get the depth of colour with the natural dyes. And they said, absolutely fine, no problem. No problem at all.
Wonderful. Now, I have a Weathers Buchanan and tartan, and I've seen different, I can recognize a weathered Buchanan, but there's always variations in the tones, depending on which company makes it, etc. So that's lovely. Gabriella wants to know, is it itchy?
Not at all. Not at all. It is pure wool. However, the wool is really soft. And in fact, this wool, the one in the plant dyed version, this comes from the Falkland Islands. And there's a really good reason why it comes from the Falkland Islands. Obviously, wool is available pretty much throughout the world. But if you imagine the Falkland Islands, they're in the middle of the Atlantic. They're battered by wind and rain. So the sheep are just washed by rain continuously. And because of the wind, they haven't got any scrubby bushes and things like that in the fields for the sheep to just get tangled in. So when they're shorn, the fleece isn't full of bits of twig, and it's not, when it's carded, so they're combed out, you don't get that pulling of the wool. So it stays very fresh, very clean. And it's just the softest wool in the world. And that's why we've chosen it for to use in the scarves and the wraps and the blankets. And it's not itchy at all, I promise you.
Brilliant. Yeah, Taimi, who's in Finland, says tartans are part of the culture and rather devastating history of Scotland and its clans. They were originally created, i.e. according to colours included in the coat of arms of each family clan. Here's the link. She gives a link. What do you know about tartan?
To be honest, not a huge amount. I'm not from Scotland. I'm from southern England. However, what attracts me to tartan is that it can connect you to, especially if you've got a design that you've designed yourself with really good reasoning behind all the colours and the design, it can connect you to your own landscape. And that's exactly what I've done for the New Forest tartan. The colours are directly taken from the trees and the bushes and the landscape in the national park. And it's where my roots are. It's where I belong. I'm part of that community. And so I think pretty much everything's got some sort of checkered history. But the New Forest tartan is only about 6 years old. It's fresh, and I'm very proud to wear it and to own it.
And Celine asks, which plant dyes did you use in this particular tartan? Is that a secret?
My weaver spent 6 weeks, different combinations, blending them, trying different ones. And there's quite a complicated recipe of different plants for each colour.
Celine, I hope that satisfies your answer. And she actually says, yeah, she likes the idea of a tartan much better than wearing a white robe. I wear a white robe in the UK, but here I don't wear white robes here in Ireland. And I have nothing against white robes, just that. So Liz says, do you have a guide for designing a landscape tartan, or did you just go by feel?
I went by feel. I knew nothing about tartan. When I designed the New Forest tartan, which is this one, that was registered in 2017. That was my first one. There's 5 colours in here, and I actually started off by painting strips of paper in the different colours that I'd chosen, and literally weaving them together to see what they'd look like. I very quickly realised, obviously, that when you weave paper together, you don't get the blend of colours where the 2 colours overlap. So I then managed to find, you can find it online, a tartan design program. It's ever so easy to use. You choose your colours and you choose what order you want them, and you whiz the bar up and down for the width, and it just pings up in front of you. And there's an infinite number of different, obviously, designs and colours you can do. And it's quite addictive. But no, I ended up with this, and each of these colours for the New Forest tartan has meaning. So you've got the 2 different greens, one for the broadleaf trees, one for the pines and the yews. You've got the purple for the heather, the white for the silver birch, and then the kind of fiery orange red colour for the red deer and the bracken that we get in the forest as well. So, you know, lots of meaning here. If you go out into the New Forest, you can see, you can see these colours. And then a couple of years after that, I did one for each season. So, yeah, so there's actually 5 registered New Forest tartans. This one you've just seen is called just New Forest tartan. And then you have New Forest Winter. So these are all the wintry colours that you get. And the reason I wanted this one specifically, it looks like it's black and white, but there's greys and browns in there.
Wow.
This can be made from natural sheep colours, so no dyes necessary in this one.
Wow.
So
Even the grey.
The white, yeah.
Even the grey. Wow.
So you've got white, cream, grey, brown and black in the New Forest Winter.
And those sheep, so that wools for those various sheep, where do they come from? Are they in England or the UK?
Well, this one is woven in the Scottish tartan mill, so this will be Scottish wool. Yeah.
Wow,
But
it's all
again,
sheep. Brilliant.
But there's a hand dyed version of all of these as well. So he doesn't use any dyes at all, just natural wool colours in the winter.
Wow. Brilliant.
And then you've got the spring one as well. So that's all pale yellows and pale purples for the bluebells, and the snowdrops, and primroses and fresh greens for the spring colours. The summer one. So you've got the yellows in there for the summer sun, the 2 blues, one for the sky, one for kingfisher blue. We get the most beautiful kingfisher with a flash of iridescent turquoise, so that colour's in there. Green as well. And then this sort of greyish colour just here, this is for the Solent, which is a stretch of water between Hampshire, where the New Forest is, and the Isle of Wight, and the coast, 26 miles of coastline are in the national park, so part of the Solent needed to be included as well. And then very vivid, we have the autumn, which is obviously autumnal colours, and you go out into the New Forest in the autumn and it's just like this. It's absolutely beautiful. So yeah, so we've got five New Forest tartans, all the colours with deep meaning, directly connected to the landscape. And that's where the colours come from.
Just before I forget it, what's your website that people are really interested?
www.newforesttartan.co.uk.
Spell or type, should I say? newforesttartan.co.uk. Great. So people are really liking them. And just somebody was asking about the itchy bit. So it's, wait a second. I've been wanting a bardic robe, but I'm allergic to wool. Tracy, my robes are not wool, but did you say there's one woven with silk? So one of the tartans, it's silk and wool.
So one of the options for the plant dyed hand woven one is silk. So you can have a silk one, or alpaca as well.
I can address the itchy. I can address the itchy with wearing kilts because I wear kilts a lot. I can't wear a wool hat. I mean, I have a beautiful tam that that's a traditional Irish, Scottish older type tam. And I get away with that most of the time, but she did some work on that to make it softer wool when she made it for me. But I'm fine in wool kilts. Something about the way the way it's done, and it's woven so tightly. Where hats, things like that, if there's a lot of wool in it, it itches me like crazy. But something with the tartan, and when you get a kilt made, you can also get a lining right around, your back and all that, where it would be if you are, if you do have a problem with it. So that's my input on somebody who wears a lot of kilts and have dealt with itchy.
And I'm just saying, I can't wear wool around my neck, but I can wear my tartan wraps. So I think you're right, the tightness of the weave, there's less bits to stick out. Like I can't wear Angora, or I can't have any, what's the other stuff? Hairy stuff that's gone from my head. Mohair, anything like that has fibers that stick out, they drive me crazy. So that fine, tight weave works really well. So you're getting lots of comments about the colors and the blends. They're just absolutely beautiful. Before we go further, I'd just like to break this for a minute. Or have you more to say, Kate? And then I was going to ask
carry on.
Some having that visual creativity, or it would be lovely to hear some more bardic offerings. So some banjo playing, maybe, Billy.
Okay. Hold on. Let me get one of my babies.
Okay.
This guy here is 123 years old.
Ooh.
SS Stewart nylon strings. And it's in a open tuning.
Is that a skin?
What was that? No, the skin's synthetic.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's best to use synthetic skins. I do have a gourd banjo over here with a goat head. It's really best with the weather changing, and they do such a good job now making these heads. And I'm just gonna let's do an Alwyn, and I'm just gonna let that Alwyn flow and see what the banjo wants to say this morning. How's that?
Yep. That is absolutely wonderful. Just two questions. One for you, Billy. Are you wearing one of your kilts today?
I am not, because it's really cold out and I have to go work, and it's in a warehouse. So, I mean, it's not pretty in 20-degree weather in a warehouse. Hiking, yes, I'll hike through snow in a kilt.
Yes.
I can show you a couple of my kilts.
Do.
Okay, hang on.
So while you're doing that, there's a question. I think, do you have links for the Scottish Tartan Weaving Company and your friend who's doing the weaving? That's all to be found on your website. Isn't that correct?
Yes. I mean, I don't have links as such. I ask Lock Karen to weave it for me, and they weave it.
So it's all through your website then?
Yes. Yeah, there's a lot of information on there.
Okay, so what I've already put it up in the chat to all of them is the newforesttartan.co.uk is where you'll get that.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Wonderful playing. Ferdiad says, Ferdiad, who's Scottish, I would definitely recommend people learn the history of tartan, especially tartans of the types originating in Scotland. Yeah. So.
Yeah, that's pretty important to me. I only get my kilts through. I get most of mine through USA Kilts in in America, and that's only because they order everything from Scotland, and they make them here, and they're so into the traditional, and they'll have a write-up on the story behind it, and the whole bit. And
there's a huge amount of information and you can find about the tartans, because when you register a tartan, you have to explain every single color. You can't just put in some random design and it'll be accepted. You have to have real meaning behind it, and a real reason why you want it as well. However, there are a lot. Our own Bards, Ovates and Druids tartan is number 13,478 of the tartans here. I'm going to cover that bit up. But this
What's
is
the number again?
Here's our certificate. The bit I'm covering up is what they call the thread count. So that's like the recipe for the tartan. It's the name of the color, the order of the color, the width of the color. And it's like the secret recipe of the tartan. And that's what Billy and I worked so hard on. But this is our certificate from the Scottish Tartan Authority. And it's number 13,478. So there's a lot of tartans already registered, but a lot of them aren't in use anymore, because when you register a tartan, you put on 2 restrictions. So the first one, you can say, as the designer, you can say who is allowed to wear your tartan. Now, some people design the tartans just for a wedding, for example. So it would only be the bride and groom's family who would be legally allowed to wear the tartan. However, for our Bards, Ovates and Druids tartan, we've said anybody can wear it, which is good. And then the second restriction you can put on is who is allowed to have it woven. So when I phone up and order a roll of material from the weaver, they check it's me, because it's only Billy and I who are allowed to have this woven. And there's a really good reason for that. Is one, we worked incredibly hard, and we've invested quite a lot of money in this. It costs to register a tartan. The roll of material costs thousands of pounds to have made. And with popular tartans before, people have just gone and had them made in some awful sweatshop in the Middle East somewhere, and the quality's been hideous and the eco credentials have been awful. And it's made of nylon or plastic or something just utterly hideous. And obviously, Billy and I, neither of us wanted that at all. We wanted it properly traditional, done sustainably. So there we go. So although there are sort of 13,500 tartans registered, unless Billy and I include in our wills who we're going to pass that right to, it will die out as a tartan. Nobody will be allowed to weave it. And there's obviously hundreds and hundreds of tartans where the design has passed over, and you can't weave it anymore. So it's very, very highly looked after they take it very, very seriously in Scotland.
It's a really interesting, this thing about tartan. There's a pejorative term, tartanism, that thing of inventing traditions. Now, Ferdiad said, and Ferdiad, I'm going to ask you to come in here just to clarify something. You said you definitely recommend people learn the history of tartan, especially tartans of the types originating in Scotland. And then you say, please don't skip the uncomfortable bits. Now, I don't know if you're referring to the uncomfortable bits about the history of tartan or the uncomfortable bits about wearing a kilt. I'm not too sure what's uncomfortable about it, but maybe you could add something. You could clarify that a little bit. And while we're waiting for you, Ferdiad, just Tracy asks, where did I get my non-wool robe? And most members of the order have cotton. They make them themselves. Cotton or silk. I happened to get my one in Glastonbury in a shop, you know, but and I've one that was made for me, but you don't have to have wool. Most people don't have wool. So Gabrielle has velvet silk. She made it herself. Yeah. So Ferdiad, what do you mean? He's not coming on. He just says kilts are very comfortable, are very comfy. Yes. Anyway,
well, I'll show off some of mine real quick then.
Okay, thank you.
All right. So this is a Stuart Hunter's Ancient, and it was made by and they're great craft people. Look at the buckles are great with Celtic knots on them, and so this, according to the website, and I had to pay extra for this particular tartan. This is a great. You can get this through them too. That's a great kilt pin.
Oh wow! Yeah,
isn't that awesome? It's a wolf. This one, they said that it was that a piece of this was found in a bog. Now, due to not my lack of studying this stuff for crazy, because I had. But just my lack of school, I didn't go to school. It's all on our other site. But supposedly they found a piece of this tartan in a bog. Okay. Now, it would have been before tartans were assigned to clans. That was a later thing. It was all whoever was weaving them in different areas. So that would have been the area, but it would have been the area where the Stuart clan was. So that's why it was connected to the Stuarts. And then this one here, and this is great because this is also from those guys. And this is from a mill in Scotland, but it's not wool. And this is what I hike and wear a lot in the summer. It has Velcro. I could just Velcro it on and go. And this is a Stuart. This is a regular Stuart Hunter.
Okay.
Just the one that you're going to see all the time with people. Again, a pretty cool. I'm kind of I just collect all this stuff. This was actually made by a guy up in Colorado, the kilt pin, the dragon.
Okay, very nice.
Yeah, handmade. It was nice. So yeah, there you go. That's a couple of mine.
Yeah, and thank you. And Ferdiad says, but the history of tartan is inextricably linked with deliberate attacks on Scots and Gaelic traditional ways of life. I mean, including prescription, dress laws, disarming acts, the statutes of Iona. That I do know there were times when the English banned the wearing of tartan by Scots people. Am I right, Ferdiad? So a lot of pain attached to that too. And I know there are Irish tartans as well, provincial ones, old ones. And I remember being in Scotland where in a tartan shop where Howard was getting his kilts, and the man showed me a huge big book of swatches they had designed tartans and registered them for each of the counties of Ireland so that they could wear them at Gaelic football and hurling matches. The only thing is they didn't correspond to the county colours, so it never took off.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really interesting, you know, when you say, Kate, that you had to explain the rationale for each thread, each colour. Somehow they never went and asked Irish people about the county colours and what they might put in, so it never worked. No. So
they would have had to have had some explanation, though. Maybe they had a different explanation for it, but if they're naming it after a county, they would have had to have got permission from some head of some county, something, the county council or something, to register it. I mean, maybe, 100 years ago, you didn't have to do that, but that is what you need to do now.
Well, this is modern times, and it's really
Okay.
interesting because where I live in Kilkenny, and the colours for Kilkenny this is for the Gaelic football, the GAAs, black and amber, and the Kilkenny kilt was something like green and blue. It's like it just had made no sense at all. So obviously, Kilkenny people are really wedded to their county colours, but I don't know how that was. Freddie, just coming back to, there's also a long history of Scottish culture being sold off as a commodity. As history in the Highland clearances and the co-opting of Scottish tartan and its reinvention by Victorian aristocracy. So it's quite loaded, the history around tartan. And
Yeah, myself as an American starting to wear them really goes back to my deep ties in my pagan practices. As a kid, I was always looking for God under a rock. And as I grew older, of course, I found paganism and witchcraft, originally American witchcraft, and then into Druidry 8 years ago. And for me, I just can't explain it. The first time I heard bagpipes at a Renaissance fair, and we were really, really displaced. Different DNA things come back, and it's always different, but it's anywhere from 40 to 60%. And my family's been here for a while, and the rest is something else over there in the British Isle. I'm Welsh, I'm English, and I'm Irish, and I can't explain it. It was before I knew anything, When I heard the bagpipes at a Renaissance fair, I never heard this stuff. I was this little punk kid living on the streets of Los Angeles. I was a mess when I was in my very early 20s. And I'm working at Renaissance Fair, and then I see the tartans, and it woke something up in me that I can't explain. And I, being in early paganism in America, I started doing this stuff in the early 80s, and, we appropriated every god there was out there. But when I started working with gods of my ancestors, it was like, at least this is my experience. Everybody in Ma'obad has a different experience. I had this direct feeling come through me. Like I suddenly believed in the gods, and it's the gods of that land that my ancestors came from. And the same thing when I put on a kilt, especially after I transitioned, when I put on a kilt, I ordered one in the mail, and when it came and I put it on, I just can't explain what it felt like, It is deep, it's ancestral, it's somewhere deep in my bones and my DNA, and it's really different for me. It's quite spiritual. I don't go to a bunch of Celtic festivals. I do play Irish music or Celtic music, but man, so I just want to put that out there, that at least for myself, it just went deep.
Yeah. And I think, Ferdy, it's coming back in the same way I'd fight tooth and nail against folkism and Druidry. There shouldn't be folkism in tartans either, but knowledge and respect go a long way. And it seems, we're having a respectful conversation about all of this and what it means. And Morgana says, Billy, that's so much of how I feel when I wear my family tartan. It's I'm just saying.
I have done a little bit of research on trying to find the earliest tartan I could. And I've got a few books on tartans. One's a very good one called Tartan and Tweed. And in there, it says that the earliest one ever found, now we're talking about actual tartan material found rather than just written records, was in the 16th century. And all it said was it was in the mountains of Eastern Europe. So to me, when you talk about a tartan and a design and a pattern having meanings and the colors, in my head, I imagine that, you had these people, these villages, nestled in amongst the mountains. There's absolutely beautiful alpine, and they weave their own material using the plants that were available to them. So each valley would obviously have its own microclimate, and that's how the colours kind of got connected to a certain village. You know, that village had a lot of those plants nearby, so therefore their tartan was dyed with those local plants. And over time, the design, you could recognize what village or what family people were from because of the design of the tartan. And to me, it's connecting to your family, to your roots, to your ancestry, to where you're from, to the land. And like Billy said, you know, it goes deep. It really does. So I get what people are saying about the history of the tartan, but it goes further than that. It goes deeper than that. It goes back much, much further than that. For me, anyway. So there we are.
Yeah, and Ferdiad, vernacular tartans really are an expression of the landscape they're from, the wool and the plant dyes. Absolutely. I'm just, you know, just fascinated with the dyes that you're using in the New Forest for the one, like the one I ordered, and just hearing the story. I mean, that your winter tartan, that it's just so cheap. I find there's something so magical about that it's like, it's so simple. It's like, you know, it's there around you, and it's about, here it is, the landscape is providing this. And I mean, you're talking about an array of colors with you know, undyed sheep wool. And it just shows how important the black sheep of any family is.
Absolutely right. Yeah, there it is. Running through.
We all are sort of all as druids.
You know, and that thing about your tartan, or the colors, are an expression of your landscape.
And it's about honoring that landscape too. I don't think I've used that word yet. But you don't have to go around shouting about honoring your landscape. It's just a feeling that you get when you wear the tartan. You know it. And especially with the New Forest tartan, you know, I've been doing this about sort of 6 years now. And you do see it around and about. And you don't have to say anything. You just know that person feels it too. They've got those roots. They've got that connection. Because we're very lucky in the New Forest. We've got this way of life called commoning, where there's certain rights that you can have if you live in certain properties. You don't have to own them. You can rent them, and it applies to land as well. And that's the right to turn out stock. So we've got you might have heard of the New Forest pony. It's on the rare breed list, but you wouldn't know that living here. Because there's about 4,000 New Forest ponies roaming free through the towns and villages, as well as in the open forest. And the way of commoning is very much attached to the seasons and the cycles of life, and the forest is managed by humans, but also by the ponies. They're known as the architects of the forest here. So they will eat the young shoots of the invasive plants, and they're very much part of the ecosystem here. It would be a very, very different place if we didn't have the ponies and the commoning way of life. So because the word forest, we know that word now as a wooded landscape, but actually when it was called the New Forest, it was back in 1079. And the word forest means hunting ground. So it was the new hunting ground for the king. We interchange forest and woodland now. But the New Forest is made up of so many different types of ecosystems. Obviously, you've got the woodlands, but you've also got the heathland and the coastline and the bogs and the mires, and they're internationally important. So it really is connected to that landscape. It's the history and the heritage, And the commoning way of life, you've got the verderers and the agisters. Agisters court goes back to the 13th century. It's the oldest court in the world, and it's right down the road. And I work, 8 miles from here, and it's in the same town as I work. The oldest court in the world, and they oversee the management of the forest and the stock. And we have cows and pigs and donkeys and all sorts of things, sheep, turned out onto the open forest. And if you go for a walk, you will literally walk past the ponies and donkeys as you're just walking around. And it's that connection to not just the landscape, but that way of life as well. And it's so important to me, so important. It's where I was brought up. And it's the commoning way of life means you have to be connected with the cycles of life. You have to be connected to how the forest works, the time of year when you do certain things. The stallions turned out for 6 weeks in the spring. And so you go around and there's stallions that have been through a vetting program. They're the best stallions you can get, purebred New Forest stallions. And it's a matter of huge pride. If you own one of those stallions and you get the permission to turn it out onto the forest, that's lifetimes, generations of breeding to get the stallion good enough. And that way of life, that pride and that tradition and connection to the land and to the national park runs deep. It really does. And if you see somebody else, walking along and they've got a cap or a something made of this, you just know. You don't have to shout about it. You don't have to say, I love the New Forest. You just know. And it's an incredible feeling.
Wow. So Ben Stinson says that Peter Owen Jones did a wonderful documentary on commoning. It was a beautiful insight into such a vivid living connection. So are you saying that the ponies aren't there all the time, or the stallions are kept, and then they are only the good ones or the pure ones or whatever are let out to cover the mares?
So up to 30 years ago, we had about 100 stallions running on the forest all year. And obviously there were a lot of foals. The quality of those foals was in decline. They were becoming very common. The forest was being overgrazed, and it was a recipe for disaster. So they changed it. They took the stallions off. And now I think last year there were 20 stallions. That's all for 6 weeks. That's it. So they're busy boys. When they go out, they're really quite busy. And the quality of the foal, 20, 30 years ago, you could buy a New Forest foal for £5. And it was desperate, and they were being sold for meat, and it was utterly hideous. And it's completely turned tail now. And now for a decent, little New Forest pony foal, you're looking 4 figures, which is a phenomenal turnaround, because they are on the rare breeds list. But we don't want the forest overrun. We don't want, what we call poor quality stock. We want the highest quality. And, these little ponies, they're making waves on the international stage. They can do the eventing, and they can do everything else, the long distance stuff. They can do everything else that these great big thoroughbreds can do. And they're super important.
Wow.
I did not know this about the connection with horses and New Forest. Thank you.
Very welcome.
Beautiful.
And Bernard says, we often forget most of us are common people. The New Forest has a very special atmosphere. That's lovely. Sean Clancy says, you're starting to make me want to relocate. I don't think it's got to do with the stallions. I think it's got to do with your description of...
They are a sight to be seen. They really are.
Yes, it's just beautiful. Absolutely. Yeah. So, Billy, have you anything else to play? I'm really mean, haven't I? But I think you're really good. So,
boy, I only have my tenor out. And
is that all? We'll put up with it.
1922 American-made tenor banjo.
Okay.
Open back. A lot of tenor banjos are not open back. I have a rag stuffed in here, not to bother my neighbors.
Oh, it's to muffle the sound, is it?
Oh, it's a completely, so it's played with a pick. The other
Okay.
banjos played with my fingers, and this is played with a pick. And I've only been playing this kind of banjo since last year, but my bandmates are really, really on me because they love it. And we play a lot of Scotch Irish stuff. And this St. Patty's Day, so glad when I have a gig at St. Patty's Day because I can just hide behind a banjo because it's scary here in America. But yeah, so we have a gig, so we'll be playing Irish music all night. Let me see what I could do here. Let me see if I can do Spuda Scary. And I'm probably tearing that name up, but it's a Scottish tune. There we go.
Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Ferdy says it's always a joy to hear Billy play.
Thanks,
And
guys.
Ben says there's something about a banjo that just cuts through the bullshit. Love it.
It really does. It
So-
really does. You know, and it's made up. It's a traditional American instrument. Oh, I just found out all this cool stuff. Okay, there's this great book out there. One thing I found out is for its first 100 years in America, it was not played in anything but spirituals for African Americans.
Wow.
Or it was an instrument like this. Hang on. It was a gourd, and this is not tuned, you guys. It's hard to tune. I started to tune it this morning. I have a green man on the end of mine. That's a little bit appropriation because this is an African instrument or a Caribbean. It was designed in the Caribbean. But I just grabbed this. Hold on, let me grab another banjo to show you guys this. And I think this is so cool because I always felt this instrument was very spiritual. So this research that this woman did found out that, for one thing, its original life in America, or when it got here, was only in spirituals, played with African drumming.
Okay.
And so this part right here of the drum represents the earth.
Okay.
And this, as you can see, it goes all the way through the banjo, represents spirit. And it was an old African design that came over. So they were also able, the first slaves down in the Caribbean were able to keep a lot of their mystery hidden in this instrument. And I find that absolutely incredible. And that's why I think a lot of us, and I hope to see the banjo go further, more out of bluegrass, more out of that music, maybe into more tribal music, more African music, some more Celtic music, or whatever our spiritual music is, because I believe it's a spiritual instrument. So there's my speech.
Thank you. Thank you. Beautiful, beautiful. Anything else to add to this conversation, Kate, about tartan?
No, just to say that a few people have been asking about kilts. Well, two things really. Can they have a kilt, please? And then the second one is, can they buy smaller pieces of material? So the answer to the second one is absolutely yes, you can. So you can buy pieces as small as this online, and I'll just pop them in an envelope, and you can make a patch or a little herb pouch or something like that out of it. And kilts, now Billy will know this, kilts are not cheap. And this whole tartan, the registration and the buying of the roll of material, I funded out of my savings. I'm a teacher, full-time teacher. So I can't afford to have 50 kilts made and then wait, for people to buy them. So If you'd like a kilt, that's amazing. That's exactly what this weight of tartan is designed for. It's 16 ounce. The best thing to do for that is to find a local kilt maker, go and get measured, and then have your kilt made for you, because it's a once in a lifetime thing. You know, you don't just buy a kilt and then get rid of it. It will last you an entire lifetime. So have it done properly, have it done locally, and the kilt maker will measure you and tell you exactly how much material you'll need to buy, and then go from there. And then during the making process, you'll go back and you'll be, you know, measured and fitted to you exactly. So that's the best way of having kilts made.
And you might have to go to a couple of kilt makers. Unfortunately, my kilt maker, and I think this was new with them, are in contract with a couple of mills that are in Scotland, so they can't make mine. But I will find somebody else to. And I'm thinking about just doing it as a great kilt. We'll see. If I fall over myself too many times, then I'll send it off and have it.
Well, thank you for that. Gabriella says, can we have a moment to say how lovely Kate's hair is? Very mermaidy.
Thank you very much.
Really sweet. And Ferdia says, give some love to the teachers. Absolutely. Ferdia is also a teacher. Yeah, I think it's lovely that, you know, the tartan is available for all pockets or purses. And so the fact that you can get a small piece, that you can make something, that you still have the tartan, and then, you know, if you can invest in enough fabric to get a kilt made. I mean, I know because Howard I have 2 of his kilts, and, you know, with tartan, and they are amazing pieces of work, and the amount of fabric that's gone into them, etc. So I'm keeping them for my son when he's ready to wear them, you know, that they're a serious piece of a serious investment and investment, an investment in investment.
When a quilt is made, where the pleats are at the back, it should, once pleated, show the exact design again. So each pleat, you're looking. This is called a set. So one repeat of the pattern. So each pleat, you'll need to fold it. You'll need to get rid of an entire one, and then again and again and again and again, so that when it hangs, it looks like that. So it's a huge amount of material to use on a kilt, and that's one of the decisions you'll have to make. How wide would you want the pleat? How long do you want? You know, there's so many decisions you need to make when you have a kilt made. So it really will be bespoke to you.
Absolutely. And I love how you get measured for a kilt. You're on your knees, and it's from your waist to the ground.
Kneel. There's something quite nice about that.
And you know that kilts come to the knee. You know, they're not long, and it's nice looking at knees. Anyway, sorry, that's. But I wore a kilt as a child, and it's interesting, Billy. Before you transitioned, would you have ever considered wearing a kilt?
I did, and it didn't feel right. It felt different. I mean, when I was by myself, it felt okay, but when I was out in public, because, oh my God, I just grew up in a time that it was so important for me to be butch and to be seen butch. You know, I still represent that community in a big way. You know, I was a butch lesbian for, 50 years of my life. And so that it was just interesting. It didn't work. I tried at Renaissance Fair. But boy, when I put one on after I transitioned, it was
that's wonderful.
And I'll get here in America, you'll get dumb guys saying the dumbest things. If they only knew how manly a kilt makes you feel.
Oh, I couldn't agree with you more. And look, so I don't know how I feel because I don't feel that way, but looking, I need to look at, I think absolutely. I wore them as a child, and girls my age, we wore kilts, but I remember going to an Irish dancing class, and boys in competitive Irish dancing wore kilts. And somebody asked me, was I a boy? And I remember being so upset. But I did as an adult. I wore a kilt for a while. And now I don't, and I won't. So I wear wear it in another way. Do you have a kilt, Kate?
Do you know, I don't, but I have had a skirt made, a floor-length skirt with a ruffle going down the front in the New Forest tartan.
And it looks good.
It's it's just beautiful. And it's lined, and it's absolutely lovely. Yeah.
Wow.
I'll have to say I was really taken when you said that your husband wore kilts and you still had him when I was on Fireside Chat last time, because I do live at 8,000 feet in the middle of nowhere, and I feel very cut off from community, and I don't know what everybody is really like over there. I don't. I'm trying. I'm learning. I'm getting to know you guys pretty well, but I was quite taken. I was really like, yes.
He did, and he couldn't understand why anyone wouldn't. He found kilts way more comfortable than trousers. He didn't wear them for the last 4 years of his life.
I did a 6-week challenge one summer, and I wound up wearing it the whole summer. And most summers, I just wear a kilt most of the time. Yeah.
And he found it warm even in winter because he had knee socks. Wore the woolen kilt socks up to his knee.
Yeah, but we're 8 degrees here.
Oh yeah, because that's 8 degrees Fahrenheit. You're all wusses. Yeah. Okay.
No, it gets really cold here. It gets like glass cracking cold here.
I don't know how the Scots did, because in Scotland it can be really cold. I mean, traditionally, there's all the things about, what other undergarments were worn. It was just the tartan. But yeah. There's Belinda asks, is there special kilts or skirts for women traditional? Traditionally men wore kilts, but women would have had tartan. So they would have had, depending on the time, the era in which they were living, they would have had clothes made out of tartan. So it's like, would you have your long skirt with the ruffle? That's your own.
The tartan, the kilt as we know it is pretty new, with the buckles and all of that. Yeah. So so not too long after that, they started making kilts for women that were longer. Believe it or not, were longer.
That's right. Yeah. Women wear them longer.
Yeah. So, in a way, they are traditional because it's evolved into that, where the women might have worn, a wrap or a skirt or whatever in a tartan for their county back then. But now there's the traditional kilts, beautiful kilts you can get for women online now. Mm-hmm. But go to a kilt maker. Don't go to be sure it's getting made by a kilt maker with Scottish tartan, for any of that.
And I know traditionally men would have had one. It's almost like a sari, wrapping it around them, and then it would come over the shoulders, and they could sleep in it.
That's what I just ordered.
Yeah. So that's a great kilt, and that's where the saying "the whole 9 yards" comes from. So, yeah, because a great kilt would take the whole 9 yards.
9 yards, yeah.
So if you're going to do something, do it properly. Go the whole 9 yards. Yeah, that's where a great kilt is. Yeah.
And Howard had a utility kilt because he used to go out in the garden in his good tartan, and I'm saying, for God's sake, be careful. So I got him a utility kilt, and he could abuse that. And you can get ones, with tool belts, so you can put all your tools into it. And it's funny, they don't call them kilts. It's the company's utility kilts is based in the US, but they call them non-bifurcated garments, which is a great word.
I got a bunch of those too.
Yeah. And they're practical if you want to keep your tartan, your wool, given the investment that you want to keep it safe, and well. But yeah. So it's been just So lots of interest in I'm just looking at the comments here. And Ricky asked a question. You were talking about who's legally entitled to wear a particular tartan. What's the penalty if someone wears? So if I wear a Stuart tartan,
it comes down to intellectual property, which is the equivalent of a patent, except it's for a design. So like a piece of artwork basically can have intellectual property. But I have no idea what the penalty is.
I just wondered. And Sean Clancy wants to make a cloak out of tartan. So he says, was looking for a new cloak for Bealtaine celebrations this year. The tartan would be incredible. Can't wait to visit the website. So yeah.
That's what I just ordered. I'm planning on like wearing it. What did I get? Like what we call 2 yards. So that should be a nice little cloak.
Mhm.
Yeah, beautiful, beautiful.
Then I'm going to order. Well, not the whole 9 yards. I'm 5'2.5", and I'm like size 32 waist. It would be ridiculous. So mine's going to be more like 5 yards.
Oh, it's wonderful. Ferdiad has just identified what the penalty is. I love it. It's that we'd set the haggis on you.
Yes.
Perfect.
Only during haggis season when they're out and they're really cranky. You know, I mean, there's no point when they're really mild and sleepy. Ferdiad. Oh, so what? Somebody suggests cut off 1 inch of a finger for each square.
Ooh.
Oh, and John King, who's in Achnamerkin, in Scotland, wearing a kilt that is of another clan would be met with complete scorn. So I suppose scorn is more effective than I'm going to sue you. It's like just probably a pathetic thing to do that you wouldn't dare do it. Yeah, and Ferdy, as we're talking about haggis again, if you wake them up from hibernation, they're really fierce. Yeah, and I just would never recommend anyone antagonize a haggis. Anyway.
Brilliant comment.
Anyway, so is there anything else you'd like to say about that, Kate?
I don't know, but
No,
I just thought
I would
funny.
actually like to say 2 thank yous actually. First of all to Philip Cargon, because without his backing, his permission, it wouldn't be possible, because I needed that permission to register it. And then secondly, to help to fund this, I asked people if they wouldn't mind pre-ordering some of this material. And it did take a very long time, because I ordered it and then another lockdown came and everything. And so it was months and months and months that people have been waiting for their pre-orders to arrive. But, you know, just having the faith in some random girl from England saying, yep, I've done it. You know, people did order and it has been sent out, and I hope it's arrived safely. But just thank you, because that was a huge help for people pre-ordering, just because it's, you know, it's several £1,000s to get a roll made. So thank you to those people as well, and to Philip Cargon.
Oh, wonderful. And it's great when people have that trust and say, okay, I'm willing to invest in advance. That is beautiful. Pat here from Ulster. Tartans have a bit of an issue in the north of Ireland due to the loyalist tartan gangs. I wasn't aware of those tartan gangs, Pat, during the early years of the Trouble. But then Northern Ireland has an unfortunate history attached to lots of things. And it's so true. And it's so sad as well. Howard was a Campbell, but he was a Derry Campbell. So his Buchanan came from his mother from Glasgow. So it's just interesting. And John King says, we have wild haggis all over the place here, serious wildlife. So between haggis and Pat says, generally we can get sectarian over brands of potato crisp. Anyway. So
I was going to say, for the order, maybe we need to, for protection, call on the wild haggis.
Absolutely.
Our protection animal of the order, the wild haggis. I'll draw one.
Okay. Oh, that's brilliant. And make sure you draw the legs in proportion. You know, there's always one leg longer than the other, so they can run around the mountains. So, oh, brilliant. This is really enjoyable.
Oh, my God. And we're all drinking tea.
We are. We really are. Cheers.
Anyway, so Pat says, who would win a fight between a mulligat, as in mulligatawny soup, and a haggis? I have no idea. I think the haggis would win.
Haggis.
Wild haggis, yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah. So did you want to say something? I cut across you there, Billy, before we finished. Did you want to say something?
Oh, no, I was just going to say that thing about the haggis totem.
I think
Sorry. I am a performer. I am a bard.
No, I think it's great. I mean, humor is really, really important, and it lends to creativity and all of that. And yeah, so if the wild haggis is the protector of the bod tartan, so be it.
Absolutely.
And it's all been witnessed now. So I think we've come to the end of our chat, and this is a shorter one than usual, but it's been really, really enjoyable. And I want to thank you, you know, for the two of you having dreamt this up and persisted, like you say, 2020. This is 3 years on, and I remember it coming in, you know, and seeing samples and things like that, and it seems such a long time ago,
It does.
doesn't it? And I'm really looking forward to receiving mine, and I'm just so excited to have something that's hand woven and hand dyed, and you know, to know the maker and say, okay, these dyes came from these plants in this area. I've yet to visit the New Forest, and
You're very welcome anytime.
thank you. And I know the Sylvan Grove have their. Do you know the Sylvan Grove?
Mhm.
And so they're in the New Forest, and so it's just someday I'll get there. You know, loads of places to see in this wonderful way. So, so Philippa Shallcross, definitely going to be my spirit animal, the wild haggis. So, so
You and me both.
just wonderful. So, Rosemary says, lovely to have a giggle, lightens the spirit here in New Zealand. Okay. And so I really enjoyed it. Lovely cloth, Kate, and music, Billy. Wonderful chat. So I want to wish you all the best. I'll let you say goodbye. And
I'm having
Well,
animal
thank you
care.
ever so much, everyone, for listening. And I really hope you like it. We got some excellent feedback on social media when we designed it, and the orders are coming in. And so just thank you ever so much. And it's lovely to see you all. And thank you to Billy too. You know, this is the first time we've actually chatted for real, isn't it? It's always just been on
really?
Facebook Messenger up to now.
Yeah.
So it's nice to get some interaction too.
There's a suggestion, Billy. It may not be for now, but what about a haggis song?
Oh yeah. Okay. I'm on it. It'll have to be on the tenor banjo.
Okay.
Or maybe just on the bowron.
You decide. You decide. So I let you say goodbye, and then I leave you back in the green room when we look at the comments just a bit after I've said goodbye to everybody else.
Okay.
All right. Blessings, everybody, and peace to all the directions, and peace in your hearts, and thank you very much for coming and visiting with us.
Okay. So I'll see you in a minute. So I'm glad. Look, just judging by the comments here that you've enjoyed the chat. It was a bit of fun, bit of lightness, and it was my first time to have two guests, and just great comments. I see Celine honoring the landscape by making use of its plants dyes. Beautiful and beautiful music. Thank you all. That was great. So it was lovely to have your comments, and I'm just more comments about bagpipes and haggises, and it's good to have a sense of humor. So listen, enjoy the rest of your day, evening, morning, afternoon, or if you're watching a recording of this. So thank you all for making these chats so much fun for me and for my guests, and I look forward to seeing you again for another chat. Until then, slán go fóill.